Hi, thanks again for tuning into Sims Workshop here on YouTube. So today we're going to be talking about Deeplight by Frances Hardinge. It's been labeled as it's a fantasy that is similar to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Frankenstein. So when you see those two things together, you're just like, ooh, really cool, right? I'm personally not a fan of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I think it's one of those books that I have to reread to appreciate because, I had to read it in high school and your tastes sort of change as you grow older. So I think maybe now I'll probably appreciate it more. But Frankenstein I've always loved. I've read that book about 5 times. Twice just because, and 3 times for class. I went to Emerson College, so there's like this whole thing. There's this course called Lit of the Gothic. It's really amazing. And I took Lit of the Gothic Part 1 and Part 2. So, of course, Frankenstein was on the list. So I did get to read it many times. And I read it once in middle school and then once in high school. So when you have those two sort of stories labeled as the foundation of this novel, you're kind of already drawn into the premise. I did like the book. Let me start by saying that. I give it a solid 3.5 stars. I think the most off-putting, actually the only off-putting thing for me was Jalt, the character. I really hated him. As I'm reading this, I sat in my bed here reading this book, and my husband would be sitting here playing his computer games, and I'd be like, oh, I hate this character. I want him to die. And then I would read the lines, some lines. I'm like, do you hear him? Do you sound like he's like the most manipulative jerk in the world? But I will say this about Hardinge's writing. She is able to represent or showcase what a toxic relationship looks like, because this is like the epitome of a toxic relationship. I mean, they're both sort of orphans, and Hark, he feels like he owes Jalt. He's his best friend, but he notices that something has changed in Jalt in the past couple of years. But he still sticks by him. He makes excuses for him, which is characteristic of a toxic relationship, where you feel like you have to, like you owe this person constantly. And it's like, oh, things will get better. They'll always get better. Oh, he has a point. I was wrong. That kind of mentality is something you have to escape. And I love Hardinge's writing style because she does showcase that you can escape this sort of relationship. And I think that's important when you're telling a story like this, because they're so young. And I don't think a lot of people realize that they're in toxic relationships, not for a long time. And for Hark, it does take him a long time to really come to terms with the fact that his best friend is no longer the person he thought he knew. But I really just hated Jelt. It just makes his ending much more gratifying, the fact that I hate him so much. And I honestly would reread that scene as many times as I would watch Joffrey die in Game of Thrones. And I have that DVD. I watch that scene on repeat. I watch it, wait to the end, pause, rewind, watch it again. I'll probably watch it 2 or 3 times in a row, just because I really hate Joffrey. That kid's a great actor, by the way. And this is one of these scenes, in the book. It's very vivid. It's very detailed, and that showcases Hardinge's writing style. She does use a lot of detail in her storytelling. She does use a lot of scenery to paint the scene, and I think it's really interesting how she goes about this world. Hark is sort of an indentured servant, and I think that's very key for him. He kind of cons his way into being an indentured servant rather than going to the mines when people die, because he did commit a crime, and he was caught because Jelt is an ass, and just sort of abandoned him, and so he's forced to be an indentured servant. And I think it's really interesting where he is an indentured servant. It's a growing point for him, because he gets to finally be treated with respect, more respect than he was ever treated with as a friend. You know, these are caretakers. You have a scientist who, you know, bought him as an indentured servant, and she treats him with respect. You know, she does respect him. She does respect his ability to get stories out of people and to tell stories as well, which is why she bought him. And I think the fact that he gets more respect and earns more friendships as an indentured servant than he does as just a kid on the street with his friend who's supposed to be looking out for him, it really says a lot about Jelt's character, and it really says a lot about their relationship and their dynamics as a whole. And I think that's really key here in showcasing the character development and the character growth as far as Hark is concerned. I will say this, I really want to applaud Harding because her best character in the novel is, oh God, I wish I wrote her name down. She is deaf, so she communicates by reading lips and using sign language. I wish I knew more sign language. I probably know as much sign language as I do Spanish, which is not saying a lot. You would think as a Mexican I would know my Spanish. I don't. I'm a bad Mexican. But I'm trying to fix that with my son, don't worry. I make sure my mother speaks to him in just Spanish so that he learns and is not like me and has more opportunities. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, she communicates very powerfully. You know, she's the smartest character. She's the most observant character. And I like how she shuts people out. Because she's deaf, so when she doesn't want to listen to you anymore, she just turns her head. She's just like, okay, I'm done with you. And I think that's great. It shows that she has a lot of personality and a lot of strength and a lot of respect for who she is as a person. You know, she respects herself. She even tells Hark, she's like, you're not allowed to pick your own friends anymore. And I think that's great that she's like, you're friends with him? Why? Even she sees it from the beginning that Jelt is a pretty toxic character. So the fact that those two sort of form a bond and a friendship throughout the novel. At first they don't really like each other, but the fact that they form this bond is really incredible, and it's really good storytelling. And I really do love the fact that the best character in the novel is someone who is deaf. I mean, you've seen me say this before. I personally don't have any disabilities, but I do appreciate the fact that there are more novels featuring disabled people as strong, independent, fierce protagonists. I really do respect that, and I think, you know, if it fits the story, then it should be showcased more often. So I do appreciate that as far as, you know, the storytelling is concerned. I do want to applaud Harding for really doing that and really showcasing this disabled character in all her strength and all her glory. I mean, she's pretty incredible. If it weren't for her, they all would be doomed. As for the story itself, it's a little slow at times. You know, I guess that's probably reminiscence of the classics. You know, it does have a really slow and steady pace as it's sort of developing this story and the premise of it. So it does take a little bit to get into because of that. It's a book you can easily put down, but it's a book you want to pick back up again. You don't need to. It's not one you like have to read in one setting. You can, you know, just enjoy the novel for what it is and just go with the flow. And it does pick up. It does pick up. I will say this. It's like a little, oh, I know what that is. Never mind. I thought there was like something black over there, but oops, just on my screen. It does pick up near the end. the first half of the novel, it's a pretty slow, steady-paced novel. You know, Harding is really developing this character. She's really developing the world, but she keeps the pace very slow and very steady. That's not bad, because at least you do get to know the characters and you get to understand their dynamics, and you do get to understand this world, because there's a lot of mythology and there's a lot of history in this world. That last half of the book, once Hark sort of finds this heart of a god, I think is where the tension starts to rise and the action starts to rise and all the mayhem starts to unravel. And I think that's very good in that last half of the novel, especially that last quarter of the novel. It goes from slow and steady, pick up, and then it kind of just shoots up as far as pacing is concerned, and it really draws the reader in. And I do like her mythology. I wish there was a little bit more mythology, but I understand that's just because I want more. I think it'd be cool if Harding released like a little book detailing the gods, their origins. You know, like those Percy Jackson books that aren't really stories, but they're just about the gods. I would like that for this book, because the gods are really interesting in how they're formed. You know, you get little tidbits of how they're formed, but it's nothing really, it's left a lot to your imagination. So my imagination is just going right now, because I want to see drawings of these gods. I want to see what they look like. Like, I want to see intricate paintings of them that are kind of, you know, showcased in the novel by storytelling. You know, she does tell us about these paintings. She does show us in detail what these paintings are of. But I would like to know a little bit more, especially the Lady of the Sea. Ooh, whew. Now that's a story I would love to read. And I also think it's interesting how they're formed, because you have your ocean, but you have an undersea beneath the ocean. And I think that's really cool, because when you think of gods, you think of, oh, they all live up here, they're watching down on us, right? No, these gods are from underneath. They're from the undersea, and in the undersea, they sort of come alive by fear. And I think that's really, really cool how they're brought to life. It's really unique too that all these gods live in the undersea, and then they come up to the sea. So it's like you have the ocean, sea, and then you have the undersea. And I think that's really cool and really interesting as far as the mythology goes, which is why I want more of it, because they were once human, it's pointed out. I think that's so cool. I mean, anything mythological related, I'm sort of like instantly intrigued. I love mythology. So if it's in the story and if it's done really well, it definitely intrigues me. I almost gave this book 4 stars, but I really hate Gerald. I really hate him. And I know it's wrong of me to just dock half a star for that, but I really hated listening to him talk. And I really didn't like the way he treated Hark. Once again, I'll probably reread that death scene again just to see him die. But, you know, other than that, he's really the only hindrance to the story. And the slow pacing in the earlier half of the book, it kind of did lose me just a little bit, because I really wanted the story to pick up, especially after, you know, you get this premise of 20,000 Leagues meets Frankenstein. So I really wanted to hurry up and get to that point, but I understand that there's a lot of history that needed to be built out. There was a lot of world building that needed to be built. There was a lot of character dynamics that needed to be established. It doesn't take away from the story, I'll say that at least. It does add to the story and the development of the story. It just does slow down the pacing a lot, which could lose the interest of any reader. That being said, overall, Deeplight by Frances Hardinge was really a good book at the end of the day, and I definitely do recommend it, especially if you are a fan of the classics. So once again, this was Deeplight, Frances Hardinge. Go ahead and purchase it from your local bookseller, and if money is not too tight, or if money is too tight rather, check it out from your local library. Please remember to support your local libraries. Have a great rest of your day and happy reading.